The eye test from the AEW fans, this guy doesn't fit in. The eye test from the WWE fans, this is our champion. Finish the story.
I even did like Stevie Richards' old 20-something minute DDPY take, which is great because I think Stevie Richards now goes online and talks about how none of us know how to wrestle anymore. But so the whole time I was looking at him like, oh, that's the guy. But he's also my instructor in this moment, you know?
Okay, so well, it's nice to know that Cody Rhodes is a subscriber, if nothing else.
I don't know if it's this, and I have to be fair. I don't know if it's this show, the previous wrestling channel, or he's referring to the Raw SmackDown review with myself, Vince Russo, and Ben Hameen. So I'm not sure. It could be a combination of all three. One thing I will say, first of all, Cody's very dry and sarcastic and has a very different sense of humor, which I can appreciate. And that last line about like, yeah, there's the guy, but he's also my instructor. The only heat I have with Cody, first, I want to thank him for not being as rough on me as he is with Disco Inferno. He goes at Disco pretty hard with that stuff, but that's Disco's thing online and how he talks about the business. So you can appreciate his viewpoint with a lot of things. Sometimes the delivery with Disco can be what people focus on. But the real heat I have with Cody is the fact that he did the old 20-minute workout, not my 75-minute one with 100 exploding knees, a 100-second plank. So I would challenge you, Cody, to do that workout, and then you'll probably still come back. And I never said that that none of you can wrestle anymore because God knows I can't wrestle. I consider myself a worker. If it was based on wrestling ability, Cody's a state champion, I believe, or he's a very proficient amateur wrestler, is Xavier Woods. But it would be currently, what's the famous thing? If the business were real, it would be like Brock, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, maybe Taker, two other people, and you would have to, and that's it. That's your wrestling business right there. Billy Gunn, Bob Holly, I think, are two more that could really fit into that. So you'd have like what? 3 hours of Raw Underground every week, Lions Den matches, all that stuff. So, but yeah, I don't take it, I take that as kind of like the dry sense of humor, but also I guess people know that my kind of breakdowns and analysis do exist. And really the mission statement of this, as well as all the other stuff I did, is to really educate the wrestling fan and maybe educate younger wrestlers that aren't good workers, that aren't good wrestlers at this point in their career, and hopefully help them out. Of course, at the same time, James, perception is reality. And I understand that. And I know that when fans or wrestlers or anybody looks at me, they have a particular impression based upon that perception, which is their reality. I lost almost every match. I never really got pushed out of 2 or 3, maybe 4 times in my career, 2 pushes being major, being BWO, which a lot of people, if you never watched DCW, you don't even know about that, and Right to Censor, which I look nothing like that character anymore. So there's a disconnect there as well. So the perception from, the office, the boys, and of course the fans is that I shouldn't have an opinion on this because I was nothing but a scrub, a jobber, lower card, filler, and with the expenses that we put up too, obviously I was one of the lowest paid guys in the company as well. So I traded that for opportunity. But long story short with Cody, I'm entitled to my opinion and he's entitled to his viewpoint. And I have to say this too, coming from AEW to WWE, I held my breath and said, Cody's a great, incredible talent. And I like the Stardust character. I know that's a polarizing thing compared to where he is now. But I knew Cody going back would get over, but I was worried that Vince, being the person that he and Nick Khan, went after and recruited Cody to come back to WWE, said Vince and Nick flew to his house in Marietta, Georgia, and convinced him to sign. I was convinced in my own way that even at the millions of dollars a year they were guaranteeing Cody, that they would make him initially at least an example that AEW guys can't get over here. And then they would start to push him after they proved their point. There were many fans that reached out to me via social media and emails saying, it's laughable to think that Vince would bring or pay Cody all this money to bring him back and not make him world champion. Where I know the pattern of Vince McMahon with AEW guys, with TNA guys, with WCW guys. Famously or infamously, Sting stayed out of WWE for how many years? Because of the whole thing with The Rock turning around to Booker T and saying, "Who are you?" That was based on precedent, was my educated viewpoint, which, by the way, I've never been more happy to be wrong about anything in my life. To be wrong, to see Cody finish the story, to see a Rhodes family member be a WWE world champion, which I still believe Dustin should have been a world champion. I believe Dusty should have been a world champion. And let's talk about precedent. What did Vince do to your father when he came from WCW? He put him in polka dots, but with the way the family, all three guys, Cody, Dustin, and Dusty, you can hand them anything and they can get it over. And I can see how Dustin and Cody have that in their DNA because Dusty was given a super embarrassing gimmick and twisted it to still be the American dream. So yeah, I've never been, tell me I'm wrong all day long. Cody's a super successful talent. He's one of the most over guys in the business right now. And I hope that continues for many years to come.
Another thing with Cody, he was talking to Chris Van Vliet. I know you've been interviewed by him in the past as well. He's never gone into the specifics of why he left AEW. He's always said that he and Tony Khan would have an agreement to never let the true nature of the sort of breakup, I guess, slip. So, but with Chris, he gave a couple of telling comments.
You ever seen the end of The Dark Knight?
Of course.
I think that's, again, it's super convoluted, and I'm not comparing myself to Batman, but there's a piece of it that's really important. To certain fans from the AEW fandom, they need the story to be, they didn't want me, they pushed me out. They need, he was bad, they need that story.
So you're the villain.
They need me to be the villain.
That Gotham needs.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I was always fine with accepting that because of the respect I have for it in the first place. How difficult it was to do the original All In, how unbelievable the feeling was to do Double or Nothing, how fortunate we were that Tony wanted to invest in this vision, and he had a vision as well. How special Mad Nick in the BTE era and Kenny and my rivalry in New Japan, especially from a dollars and cents point, that made New Japan more money than anything they ever did. And it made Ring of Honor going through the roof at the time. So regardless of any petty squabbles, I will always have a love for it. I got to wrestle Brody Lee's final match. I got to lead people, young people, behind the scenes. I'll always have a love for it. So the idea that I'm sure there's some negative stuff. I go, oh, this sucked or what, but I just don't. I just remember it lovingly. And I also knew I was leaving. I knew it was a season. I knew this isn't going to last, and there's something greater for me out there. And I know that might sound negative to people, but it's not.
Yeah, it doesn't seem. It seems like there's a lot of little tells and a lot of little hints of what people had speculated when it happened. It's really coming down to what kind of product creatively do you want to book? Cody, I think, he should have at least had more power to do that. Because you think of the EVPs, but really Cody Rhodes was the top of that founding group. You had Kenny Omega, you got the Young Bucks, and then you got Adam Page kind of on the peripheral of that, not as an official EVP, but in that group of BB Elite when they started their YouTube thing and showed that they were friends and they were tight. Cody has a great wrestling mind too. But Cody has a great wrestling mind. Like you said, it's, what did you say? The one thing about it not being the biggest prize in the game, or it's not the end goal for Cody. Like Cody, I think, definitely wanted to go back and right the wrongs of his WWE push. And he's more than done that with it. Yes, there was a push towards the end. And I think I was one of those people that commented during the Russo shows about, yeah, you have to turn him heel. And I even said he either has to leave or he has to turn heel because this is not good TV right now. This is like kind of like you're ignoring the fans and you're still being a babyface the more they boo you for whatever reason that might be.
Well, what was
So
the reason that
maybe
you remember? Why do you think the fans just turned on him? I mean, was he looked upon as just too WWE?
it could have been Brandy to some point, to a point. The Brandy had a ton of heat. And I think she even turned semi-heel with throwing the drink in Shaq's face and some of the promos that she cut. So it could have been guilt by association. Also, Cody is kind of like you look at him and he looks tailor-made for WWE, wearing suits, professional. A lot of AEW can be accused of looking indie, and that's one of the points we're going to talk about with the presentation of the product and even the characters. So maybe Cody just stood out, and a lot of the fans turned on him because he didn't look like an AEW talent. I can't quite put my finger on it, but he sure as hell looks like a WWE talent when you present it on TV. It almost, and you're talking about kind of the brand colors that we'll get into and the presentation and the lighting. Cody has very vibrant suits. He's got blonde hair. He's a very visual character on the screen. And maybe it was a visceral rejection of that with the dark, gritty type of presentation of AEW. I can't quite put my finger on it, but guess what? Cody's more successful than he ever would have been in AEW. He's a household name. Even at the top of AEW, wasn't technically a household name. And the way Cody is booked in WWE, and I believe Cody has a hand in that creative control. He doesn't have full, but he has a way to, his whole character came over from WWE. His entrance, his music, the American Nightmare gimmick, the logo, everything came over. So why didn't it work in AEW, but it works with the huge WWE machine? It could have just been the eye test from the AEW fans. This guy doesn't fit in. The eye test from the WWE fans. This is our champion. Finish the story. What are your thoughts on that? It's hard to put your finger on one particular thing.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about this with AEW, but I think they've got too much of an indie mentality overall. I think it's indie for the big screen or for the silver screen, I guess, in this sense. And Cody seemed, his entire presentation seemed a bit above it.
Too polished.
Maybe maybe too polished, maybe just, I don't know. He just, all that time on the indies after he left, he did the same thing as Drew McIntyre. I think Cody left and Drew was probably fired. I think I was right. I think I'm right in saying. But the fact is that they went on the indies and they said, well, you're wrong. You pegged me as this. I will show you where you've gone wrong. And those two have definitely...
What was your first... Wait a minute. So your first clue that this guy didn't exactly fit in was not the really expensive suits, the dress shoes, the blonde hair.
No, I'm talking about WWE. I'm talking about Cody in WWE
okay.
in the mid-2010s. It's like they pegged him in mid-card in the Stardust character. It's like, I'm more than that. And then he spent years proving that he was more than that. And the same with Drew McIntyre. Yeah,
that's going to be, and Drew was let go, and that was a situation we can talk about if I believe too much too soon. And I think Drew's even admitted to that because now he's past it. He had to go away to get over and come back.
Yeah,
Cody had to go away. That's what I knew too, and I tried to get out towards the end, but it was way too late. The perception was reality, and there was no really changing that at that point. Cody was smart. It takes a lot more guts when you're making money, and I'm sure he was making really good money, and you came up through the system from OVW. You paid your dues there. Dusty didn't offer you up any favors or anything. You were there on that island alone at OVW. And if I'm getting any of this wrong, Cody, I'm sure you'll tell me. So he goes to WWE. They give him, the legacy gimmick, I believe, with Ted DiBiase and Randy Orton. They're trying to get a rub on those guys from Randy. Then they got the handsome thing happened with the mustache and the face stuff. And he had a really good match with Big Show, I think, at one of the WrestleManias. I enjoyed that, where Big Show won the Intercontinental. I think it was Orlando. No, that was Floyd Mayweather. But one WrestleMania, Show became Intercontinental Champion against Cody, and it was a really good match. And to be able to get a good match with that size difference out of Big Show, Not that he's not good, but when you're that small, how do I keep this competitive? So good on him for that. But when you're making good money and you're on a WrestleMania and you're constantly figured in to some extent, maybe not to the extent you feel like you're capable of, but you're figured in, it's safe money. WWE's never going anywhere. But no, you're going to leave the company voluntarily, go on the indies, go to Japan, go into a place or an area or many areas you've never been before. You get over by writing a list out of the people you want to work and you put it out in the universe and it happens. Then you start your own company with Khan's money. But this really was down to Cody and the Bucks and Omega and their vision. And maybe they deferred to Cody at first with his vision, and that's why it kind of took off in the beginning. Then what happens? All the time with that. Oh my God, if you're listening to the audio, I bang my fist together for the sound.
Well, do you know, just because you're saying,
did I just change the rating with that?
I'll do that as well. I'll do the clapping with the fist clapping. I always wonder why, and I don't know if it's just, well, you know, people in 2024, everyone holds hands and skips down the street, or at least pretends they do. And, you know, in the old wrestling days, you know, it was a more, you know, hard-nosed kind of affair and everyone was out for themselves. But I don't know why 4 active wrestlers on the roster thought they could all be EVPs and all get along just fine. Because ultimately, you know, you might think that no one's got an ego and we're all in it together kind of thing, but at some point someone's going to disagree. And it happened. And then it was Cody who ends up leaving.
Well, and Khan's the final deciding vote on all that. And I know he wanted to get along with everybody. And that's where Vince has his infrastructure, his chain of command when he was there. Hunter probably has that too. The final say should be with one person. You can hash it out and do whatever. Vince used to famously call it when he would book at his home, and he had Cornette, Russo, believe it or not, they were sitting and working together at one point, or anybody else that was booking the show. Vince would go off and take a call, and Vince and Cornette would talk. Russo and Cornette would say, they would try to come up with stuff, and Vince McMahon would call it, probably not a good term at this point with Vince, mental masturbation. There's nothing that can be done until Vince comes and sits down, and then you pitch it to him. So you're almost wasting your breath, wasting your time, wasting your energy, in that term he uses. Khan needed to be that, and still needs to be that. He needs to be the final say, not on TV, but, hey, I want to pitch something to Jerry Lynn. Hey, what do you think about this? Oh, it's good. Hey, we should go to one of the people in management. I don't even know if they have writers. Or let's go straight to Khan and see where Jerry goes. He's not going to really go for that. And you may go, okay, I'm going to go past you if it's okay and give my idea to Khan directly. Or you go directly to Tony with that. But I don't see that as being the infrastructure. And that's one of the points of the list of mistakes and solutions, or list of problems and solutions for AEW. So, yeah, I mean, there's too many hands on the box. What do you think about this, James? Can you name any single instance in wrestling history where an active wrestler that's on TV is also in charge of creative booking or management? Has that ever worked out?
Only sometimes. Kevin Nash sure didn't work out. I mean, there's Jerry Lawler. That did work out. But he only booked half the year. I'm trying to think. I mean, there are a lot of wrestlers / bookers. I mean, I know Ernie Ladd did some booking. I'm sure he booked his own stuff. There are loads, I'm sure, with different degrees of success. Here's an
interesting question. Do you think Jerry Lawler, who was the most over guy in Memphis forever, was it the chicken and the egg? Was Jerry Lawler so over because he booked half the year, and the other half of the year was somebody that knew he would book him on top? Because it was always coming through Memphis, creating a monster for 3 months for Lawler to slay, and then that monster goes somewhere else. You know, and Lawler's always there. Even when Ric Flair would come to Memphis, it would either be a time limit draw, a dusty finish, or something where Lawler would stay over. My question is, if Lawler was never Booker and he was strictly a talent in Memphis, would he be in the same spot?
Well, the thing is, I think in the old days, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that one, you would get over to the point that then you would buy into the company or else threaten to leave. So therefore, you've got points in the company anyway, and then you've got say over yourself for years to come until the territory dies out or you sell up.
Well, that's a tough question. That's a Dutch question for sure.
Mm.
You know, he was really busy helping me out with the whiteboard segment this week, but I'm sure he can get some time. That's a really tough question. But then back then with Lawler, he was, I don't know what point, he was under the NWA, like, you know, management. They had a whole committee with the NWA that would say, this guy's going to be the champion. They would literally vote on who would be that. I don't know if Lawler had any.
No.
part
They were
in-
with the AWA mostly. They did get the occasional NWA champion, but Ric Flair only went once, and he never went back.
Oh, really? Only one time?
Only one time.
Wow. But
There's-
AWA had a direct relationship. Obviously, he
Yeah.
won the AWA title.
Yeah, because Nick Bockwinkel would come down periodically. Kurt Hennig would, and then I think one of their titles was like AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship at one point as well. So they were.
We need to cover. We need to cover, and Dutch probably knows more than I do, that the infamous story of Super Clash 3, where all the companies got together, but all the companies were trying to steal each other's talent in the locker room
Mhm.
during the show. They were trying to usurp and book, and it became a nightmare. It was an excellent show, but it was a mishmash of, you get 3 or 4 different companies together trying to figure out who's going to go over, who's going to do the job. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
And they can't
I
figure
don't
out
want
who's
that.
going to have breakfast or what they're going to have for breakfast that day, let alone.
yeah.
And then I'm sure the Memphis guys said that Vern Gagne stiffed them on pay as well. And I know that Dutch was jobbed out with like the Pro Wrestling USA thing.
Hmm.
Dutch was jobbed out immediately.
That might be something for the Storytime show.
Yeah.
to go
Oh,
into
well,
deep-
we've talked
deep
about it.
dive
We've
in
watched it. There's actually a match from Pro Wrestling USA tapings in Memphis where Dutch loses in like 2 minutes to Harley Race. And it's in the Memphis Coliseum. Or Mid-South Coliseum, sorry. It's like, why would you do that to one of your
Dutch,
biggest
stop
stars?
stealing my gimmick. Don't steal my gimmick, Dutch. I would have did it in 90 seconds.
But-
I would have had Goldberg like match times.
Oh no, he was truly shafted on that one. Absolutely. Get back on Cody briefly. No, I will leave Cody. We're going to go straight into the next thing. AEW expenses.
Cody, in all seriousness, once again, to cap this off, you proved a lot of people wrong, and I'm happier than anybody that you did. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep that up. And also, Cody has the school in Georgia where he's trying to help and teach the younger talent or future generation. So, yeah, he's leaving a legacy. No pun intended for former gimmick, but definitely leaving a positive legacy in the business.